Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cellular Healing TV. I'm your host, Meredith Dykstra, and today we have special guest, Dr. Dan Pompa, because he's always a special guest. And he
Special
even put
shirt.
us, you put a special shirt on for the season. Well, it is this Christmas time. I don't know when you're watching the show, but it is the holiday season here now. But you put a special shirt on for this show. Let me get that
Yes.
right. Because we're celebrating today episode number 200 for Cellular Healing TV.
Woo!
Woo!
Yeah,
200. That is pretty amazing. It has flown by, and it's been such a blessing for us to be a part of this show, to share this information with all of you. And because it's episode number 200, we thought we'd bring you a little special segment, a special episode where we're going to count down the top 5 most popular topics on Cellular Healing TV in the past 200 episodes.
These are the topics that we get the most questions about, right? So it's kind of really easy to pick them. So, can't wait. I can't wait for this show. It was funny, Meredith. She saw the shirt, like right when we came on, before the thing. She said, "Isn't that the shirt you wore at Cal Jam?" She was right. This was the party shirt. They do a 60s party, after Cal Jam. And Cal Jam's, California Jam. It's a big chiropractic seminar. And I'm usually a speaker there, and they have the big 60s party, and this was the shirt. So you actually recognize it. That's
Oh, yeah.
funny.
I remember. Well, it's kind of an unforgettable shirt. I mean, that is a bold pattern with some bright colors, and that's not really a shirt that's easy to forget.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's my 60s Cal Jam shirt. I had another one. I wore another one year with it's black and white, and it has these like swirly things, but I thought it might be too psychedelic for the camera. So I went color, man, color. And look, there's hearts on here and everything. Really 60s.
Aw, I love the color, love the love, all the hearts. Well, we've got nothing but love for all of you listening and watching. So today, this show is for you guys because these are the most popular topics that you call in about and write in questions about. This is it. So we're going to break it down. We're going to share these top 5 subjects in celebration of 200 episodes.
I think that because we get a lot of questions on it too, Meredith, I think just giving the most important parts, the highlights of each one of these subjects, I think people are going to gain a lot of benefit from the show with, because that's the things that people can remember, right? It's like, so, that's the benefit of this. So I think this show is going to give you that, the main points, the main highlights. So let's do it.
All right, awesome. So we're going to start with number 5, and we're going to do a countdown. So number 5 hot topic is emotional healing. So we've done a number of episodes on this. We've talked about it a lot. The past kind of few episodes you can have for reference if you go to podcast.drpompa.com are episodes 102, where Phil Kaplan was the special guest. He's a fitness
My buddy
guru.
Phil.
Yep, he's awesome. And he talked about mindset for healing, which is so important. I know, Dr. Pompa, you talk a lot about chemical detox, and we talk about physical detox, but emotional detox, those 3 types of detox are key for healing. Now, why is that?
Yeah, I mean, this became a real, I would say this year was my search about the topic, right? You remember, I mean, maybe it started a little bit before 2017, but knowing that we have to get rid of any stressor. The body doesn't know the difference of stressors, physical, chemical, or emotional. And I've taught that for years, but knowing that, I always say I'm not an expert over here. I would still not put myself there. I'm definitely more in the chemical part of this, but needless to say, I understand how relevant it is, and so much so that I see people that aren't getting well, that they're not achieving their health goal. And oftentimes it's a hidden emotional stress or hidden traumas. And we've talked about, these traumas, and, they can be stored in our DNA, in our cells. And so Bruce Lipton, we've done some shows on him. I mean, watch those shows too, right? Because he talked about how our thoughts, our emotions can cause cellular inflammation, but we can also turn on bad genes with bad thoughts. But also the opposite is true. We can also downregulate inflammation, change genetics for the better with our thoughts. And in the Phil Kaplan episode, I talked about my chemical sensitivity and him as well, and how we had to change our thoughts about chemicals to literally change the pattern that was in our nerve system. And the example that I always give is, if a lion walks in the room, we have a neurological setup that we're going to see a lion and think this could be death. And our
Fight or
body's
flight.
going to release, it's going to release a lot of cortisol and adrenaline, and we get a certain feeling inside and that lasts for hours. So the same thing happens with people when they smell chemicals or different things, and they get this reaction that's neurologically set up, and it becomes a physiological reaction. And we talked about how to break that. So in that episode, you said that was 102, correct? In episode 102, we talked about how to break that pattern, and how that was, once I got rid of my chemicals, especially the chemicals in my brain, now that allowed me the ability to repattern that nerve system. Because even once I got rid of the chemicals, I still had these patterns that when I would smell a chemical, I would get the same physiological reaction. And it wasn't fun. It wasn't good, even though I knew I was so much healthier. And then that's when I started having to learn that mindset and changing my thought patterns to change my neurological patterns. It's called neuroplasty, and it really is, it's a big deal to healing. So we have stored emotions, we have stored traumas, and we have to rewire our neurology around these things. So getting rid of these and uprooting these things. And we even talked about different methods through the year. We talked about tapping, we talked about EMDR therapies, and a lot of these shows, we really didn't narrow it down to one. We said, and what we learned, Meredith, is it seemed like, just based on the response that we got back from people, certain ones were better for other people's. The tapping didn't help me, but this one sure did. That didn't help me, but the tapping did. So my encouragement to everyone is, look, this plays a factor in every one of us. Emotional traumas, emotional healing. It's part of all of us. And, no doubt, watch all of the shows that you can, and you'll figure out which one gravitates to you the most. And that was our feedback throughout the year on that, I think.
Right. Well, it kind of goes along with the theme of variation as well. There's so many different types and styles and tools that work for different people. So if you search on the podcast site, you can search for the tapping episode. You can search for the emotion code episode. Search for the EMDR episode. Bruce Lipton's episode, where talking about how he's proven scientifically that our thoughts, create cellular inflammation.
Yeah.
And also, I was thinking the neurofeedback unit, the TCD Clear, is
Yes.
a wonderful way to help repattern irregular brainwave patterns as well, to help our brains function properly. So that's a really cool tool as well. All of those episodes you can find on the podcast site. So we understand the issue with wrong mindset for healing. As you said, we're never going to get to where we want to be. We can do all these perfect things with diet and lifestyle and supplements,
Right.
but if our thoughts aren't right, we're never going to reach that ultimate goal. So there's a plethora of tools to help you.
Yeah, and the takeaway was, it seemed like, we got so much feedback of how it really changed people's lives, but each one was a little different for everybody. So that was really neat that, because you and I were searching for the right answer. I'm always going, what's the best one, right? So I interviewed these people, but as it turned out, it wasn't the best one. It was the best one for the person. They all had a place, and so, know that up front. The TCD glasses, I use mine all the time. This is a kind of, I did the show with those on, right? And, it's just, that's input. Flashing lights and certain sounds is an input into the thalamus. And again, it's a way of repatterning. It's called neuroplasty, the brain. And it's new technology. But again, even the tapping and stuff, all these strategies, I'm telling you, watch those shows. They're big ones. All right, what's number 4?
Love it. All right. Number 4, a topic near and dear to your heart, true cellular detox. And this was episode number 76. It's a big one.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I talked so much about this. I really, want to hit the major thing. Cellular detox is, I hope it's because of our show, is really catching the ground. One of the takeaways is, every time I have the opportunity to have a conversation with scientists, cellular biologists, chemists, biochemists, they get the fact real detox is at the cell. And, I think we've made it popular. I just said on one of my doctor trainings today, I remember having a conversation with Martin Paul, who's a brilliant biochemist who developed the no-ono cycle. It's a chronic inflammation feedback that makes people very sick. And anyways, he saw my 5 R's and he said, Dr. Pompa, you've captured something here. This is the core of what's going wrong. And you did it in such a simple way. And the 5 R's is really the core of cellular detox. It's become a roadmap that we teach on how to get the cell working to detox itself. And real detox is about upregulating that. And again, we can do colon cleanses and saunas and all these things that we've talked about on the show that matter, coffee enemas and good stuff. But ultimately, if we don't get the cell detoxing, and the 5 R's is a roadmap to do that, we're not really detoxing, and that's the magic. And then, of course, the system of true cellular detox, it's so relevant today. When we look at what's happening with all of the chemical exposures, from glyphosate all the way through heavy metals, we are being exposed in utero. Asked to speak this year, some from big stages like Bulletproof, about generational toxicity, because we are being affected by our parents' heavy metals like lead and mercury. And we don't think of it that way, but our generation now, we are getting slammed by what our parents were exposed to. In utero, we're getting inherited, the genes turned on, and in utero, we're getting the physical inheritance of mercury and lead. And you saw, Meredith, because you sat through many of those lectures, all the studies, that show this. Toxicity in utero is where it starts, and then it builds. The only really way to break this, and this is why people don't feel well, this is why we have a surge in neurodegenerative disease, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, why people can't lose weight, diabetes, thyroid conditions, chronic fatigue, all the symptoms that people don't want. This is a toxic issue. True cellular detox is the answer. And again, I always say we don't have all the answers, but it's the answer. And part of this process is grabbing toxins, that toxic bile complex that's happening in the liver, because the toxins make their way into the bile and it's dumped into the gut, and 95% of the bile is reabsorbed back to the liver, and it brings the toxins around. And part of true cellular detox is, yes, upregulating cell function, but also using true binders to grab this bile complex. And it's why our digestion is compromised. Most people out there that have bad digestion, that can't fix it, it is this toxic bile complex that's just running its cycle. Heartburn, irritable bowel, and go through the list. So understanding that, yes, we have to upregulate cell function, that's detox, but understanding that we have to pull the toxins out of that bile complex, all of that together is what makes up true cellular detox. And using real binders, even from the cell, like cytodetox, right? It caught wind this year with, everybody. Using cytodetox to bring the toxins from the cell to pathways like the liver, and then grabbing these in the gut and making sure it goes all the way out. That process has saved so many lives. And at the last seminar, Meredith, in Carlsbad, it was the last doctor seminar. We had 300 doctors there. And the testimonies that were given by some of the doctors, practitioners in the room, of how true cellular detox saved their lives and why they were in the room, right? I mean, we had the gentleman get there that he was there. He was addicted to prescription pain meds. And Suboxone is the hardest one to come off of because of its half-life in the body so long. True cellular detox was how he did it, and he gave that testimony. I thought it was amazing. And then there was another doctor there who gave her testimony how, her adrenal fatigue that led to her being put on Cortif, which again, almost impossible for people to come off of, and how her life was changing because of true cellular detox. So, I mean, it's just, this year has been, I think, a big groundbreaker, or a tipping point, if you will, for true cellular detox, and the science around it, the biochemists that now supporting this, the doctors who are supporting it. I think it was a huge tipping point for true cellular detox this year. And the generational toxicity has been a big part of why we need this so much. So definitely near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, and the generational toxicity component really puts everything into perspective as well. And I think, oh gosh, is that better now? Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
All right. And I think the challenge with it is that it's not a simple process. So many people want a colon cleanse, want, something really simple, that
Right.
bottle of chlorella, the foot bath, to detox. But I love that you say that it's real detox, because it is complicated, because it's not so simple. But that's what makes it so powerful. So
Yeah.
it's so
Yeah.
important. The generation
Yeah.
toxicity perspective is key. And it just, I think it really helps people understand why they're suffering.
Yeah, and we have coaches, we have practitioners around the country, because most people that have these challenges, that what I spoke about earlier, you need a coach. The dosing, the cycle lengths, everything. And our goal is always to teach people that process of learning it themselves, so they can do it long enough to actually matter. And I know we've already impacted, no doubt, this country in some fashion, and hopefully we'll have even a greater impact in the year to come. So we'll pray for that. All right, what's number 3?
All right, true cellular detox, number 4. Number 3, huge topic that you've been talking about since the beginning of Cellular Healing TV, and it is fasting. So gosh, if you go to podcast.drpompa.com and just type in fasting, a plethora of shows, many hours worth of episodes you can sit and listen to and watch to learn more about fasting. Because Dr. Pompa, you've been talking about this for a long time, but fasting has kind of become cool lately.
Yeah, it's so true. I was trained in water fasting years ago, and then we did bone broth fasting, whey water fasting, and all those are still relevant and amazing. And it's just now got leverage. I mean, Jason Fung, I think, helped out with that with his book, Fasting: The Complete Guide to Fasting, right? And Longo, who we're going to get on the show in the new year to come, I know he is doing all these amazing studies, and it's now in vogue, right? We've learned, years ago, it was like, I'm not sure why this works so well, right? I mean, we had different ideas, but the science now is showing, that this is why fasting changes lives. And I would say, and I know our doctors watching this would agree, or, our cellular healing doctors would say, the conditions that we would see, we would never, ever be able to get well without, obviously, cellular detox, but without fasting. It is such a tool. It's such an undervalued tool. So I'm happy that we were part of making this, healing tool, the most ancient, if you will, healing modality. It really is. I mean, used by every culture, and every religious group, and it really, when we look at the science around it, the 2016 Nobel Prize winner won it for a word called autophagy, which simply means during a fast, the body gets rid of the bad stuff first. And that's something that we've known for years ago, but now scientifically, we see why it's happening. And not only that, in that process of getting rid of all the bad stuff, it raises up stem cells to create new cells. And so now we go, that's why the immune system gets this bolster. That's why it can downregulate autoimmune. That's why the body, all of a sudden can actually grow like better muscle and, tissues, because you got rid of the bad, and now you raise up stem cells and go, gosh, I feel like I have new joints. You do. My immune system is so much better. It is, right? So, my hair is better. My eyes are good. Yeah, you got rid of bad proteins, and now you actually created new ones. Remember, your hormones are proteins, your hair is proteins, skin, proteins, right? So when you're getting rid of bad ones with new via the rise in stem cells, man, magic happens. And I'll tell you, hold on, wait till 2018, because we are going to be bringing on, some of these scientists who are doing some of this research that we've been teaching about. And you're going to, you will always be kept up to speed with the newest research about fasting. And I think, Meredith, intermittent fasting, you said this before the show, it really caught wind, right? I think all of our viewers, most of them intermittent fast in some form or another. And I made this term popular: don't eat less, eat less often, right? Of when, and that's really the key about intermittent fasting. But I think that the block fasting is going to be the surge. If intermittent fasting was the surge in 17, I think block fasting will be the surge in 18. So we're going to focus on that for sure.
2018 predictions. I like it.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, block
Yeah.
fasting is so magical. And you were the one who taught me all about that, Dr. Pompa, because intermittent fasting now to me is just, it's a lifestyle. I don't even, think about it. It's so natural. And when I see people eat many, many times a day, I'm just like, oh my gosh, like that's crazy. But I used to do that as well. But now once, we've retrained our body to shift over into fat burning mode, we don't need to rely on those exogenous forms of glucose and carbohydrates for fuel. So it's such amazing freedom. But the block fasting, I have to say, for me personally, is definitely where the magic has happened as well.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
and it kind of goes back to number 5 too, because the physical healing, yes, but spiritually and emotionally, what can happen during a fast can be really, really incredible and life changing as
Yeah.
well. So you
Yeah.
get so many different benefits, physical and emotional, from fasting.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we made popular doing, these even shorter block fasts, 4 or 5 days, multiple times. We as a group of doctors have watched the magic of that, and being able to work with, Fung and Seyfried and others, just, about this. We have the largest clinical group of practitioners doing these fasts and getting clinical data back going, oh, wow, this is working, and even partial fasting, what we've done with that. But yeah, I mean, I think going back, and if you put in the search fasting, you're going to see all these shows. And if you haven't done this, listen, if you have challenges, again, a supervised fast, I want to make it clear that I believe a supervised fast is the way to go. Especially when you put it in conjunction with our multi-therapeutic approach, right? The cellular detox, the cellular healing, with some of these ancient healing strategies, like ketosis, obviously the fasting, and diet variation, all these things we've made popular. But, I think when you look at block fasting, let me kind of just, as I said, I would hit some of the main things, right, that happen. When we look at what happens in a short fast, even something as, 24-hour fast, 30-hour fast, we have some autophagy happening where your body's getting rid of the bad cells. That's even been shown even in 15-hour fast. So just fasting overnight, missing breakfast, you're getting some autophagy where your body gets rid of bad stuff. You're getting a hormone optimization. Your cells become more hormone sensitive. You get a growth hormone rise. So you get that in a shorter fast. But when you fast longer, you get this stem cell reaction that starts taking place. I believe it starts happening mostly around day 3. I always say that's where the magic starts to happen. You completely shift over. You get this massive rise in ketones that you're not going to get on a shorter intermittent fast, but you get this massive rise in ketones, which get high enough to where we know it's healing for the brain, turns off bad genes, downregulates inflammation, changes your microbiome. Also, not eating for at least 3 days, your body starts to use fat as a primary energy source, which burns cleaner. It rests your digestion. It changes and resets your microbiome. So, and of course, then once you get into day 4 or day, and then ride that out even one more day to day 5, you get this massive stem cell rise where your body's getting new white blood cells. It's getting rid of those hyper cells that are causing food allergies and autoimmune and overreactivity, which drives inflammation. And it's why most people don't feel well. So when you fast, your body's getting rid of those cells. It raises up the stem cells and creates new ones that aren't as reactive. And therefore, I think Longo in his work calls those, they're more naive. They're not just running around creating inflammation. So all of those things kind of differentiate why doing a block fast versus just intermittent fasting daily, you get more benefits of these things. Seyfried said just one fast a year, one block fast a year, decreases your cancer rates up to like 95% because you're getting rid of all those bad mitochondria, and that's where the cancer forms. So yeah, I mean, block fasting, it's transformative for people. It really is. And we're going to focus more on it this year.
Yeah, awesome. Stay tuned, everybody. All right. So number 2 is the ketogenic diet. Wow. Now, boy, do we get a lot of calls and questions on this. Episodes 32, we delved into it way back when. I think that was my first ever episode. And and then 104 and 105, we dug into it. But gosh, it comes up on so many shows, and we get so many questions about it. So ketogenic diet, and it's become quite popular. Really became mainstream this year as well.
Yeah, no doubt. Again, totally mainstream. It's amazing. I just did a summit with a gentleman who's doing a ketosis summit, and he said, Dr. Pompa, you were my mentor for years. I mean, years and years ago. He's like, I think back about, ketosis and these topics, and you're the first person that I think was making this stuff popular back then. And I appreciated that. I have been talking about this a long time. So much so that it became boring because I didn't think anyone cared or was listening. But fat adaptation, I loved the subject years and years ago, and I always talked about the fat and how important it was. But yeah, so ketosis has caught wind. I think Dominic D'Agostino, take our hat off to him. I mentioned Thomas Seyfried. He wrote the book Cancer as a Metabolic Disease. D'Agostino, we've interviewed on the show a few times. So I think some episodes in the 70s with Dominic, but he's doing some of the research with the Defense Department. I think he's a big reason ketosis really caught popularity again. But, I said this at the seminar. I said, caution, my crystal ball prediction about ketosis is it'll be around for 5 years in popularity, and then it's going to kind of be the next thing, right? And that doesn't make it bad. It's just, this is the way things cycle. And it will be the next thing. It was, vegan diets. It was this, it was vegetarian. It was paleo. It was, these things kind of cycle around. But, I will say this. I'm not a believer in keeping people in ketosis all the time, which we'll talk a little bit more about, right? I am a believer in it. It's a very amazing tool. Ketones do downregulate inflammation. Ketones can reset the microbiome. Ketones do burn very clean. The brain loves ketones. We know it does magic in the brain that we haven't even figured out yet. It can remake neuroconnections, and it bypasses the brain's inability to use glucose because we burned out a lot of the glucose with insulin receptors because we eat too much sugar in our diet as Americans. And ketones have an ability to go around that and fix the pathways. So, we've learned a lot about why ketosis is healing, but, our ancestors, they didn't stay in ketosis, right? Even the Eskimos who would think, what, didn't they? Actually, they didn't. They would break out of ketosis. The moment they had other carbohydrates, they went for it. They're human, right? Throw Snickers bars on the ground. They're going to find them and go, well, dang, these are good. They might ruin their health. But the point is this, humans will seasonally shift out of ketosis. They'll be forced back into ketosis. We know that it resets the DNA. It resets the microbiome. We know that being forced into times of ketosis, there's magic that happens, just like in a fast. And they used to call it the fasting mimicking diet because that you get a lot of the benefits in ketosis that you do in a fast. So when you do fasting and ketosis together, look out, right? Now we have something, again, ancient healing strategy here.
A lot of magic there. And just one critique I have of the ketogenic diet, which I know you do as well. If you look online and check out a lot of the websites, I have even had friends I've just seen on social media and different things who are very into the ketogenic diet now just because it's mainstream and it's a great way to lose weight, which is, of course, the #1 reason why most people are doing it. But some of the websites out there do not specify the importance of organic and grass-fed animal foods when you're eating them. Because a lot of the keto recipes out there, because I'm always looking at recipes, have just say like full-fat cream cheese, or even some of them say to use like more kind of toxic sweeteners, maybe like NutraSweet or some of those chemical sweeteners in there that we know are toxic to our cells. So there's definitely some caution there that we need to take with the keto diet as well when you're searching for recipes and experimenting with it, is that you don't want to, or that you really want to be very careful with any kind of animal products, proteins, dairy, and meats that you're eating. They're organic and grass-fed whenever possible, and using healthy sweeteners as well. Stevia, non-GMO xylitol can be helpful, and then a little bit of like raw honey, maple syrup, once in a while, you can use those as well on a healthy ketogenic diet, especially after you've been keto adapted and you're in that fat burning.
That's great advice, because you could, eating toxic dairy products, conventional dairy products, which people will gravitate to that, and conventional grain-fed meat. Those are very toxic things, right? So you could make something potentially good really toxic really fast. And by the way, I'll say this too. We did a little study with Joe Mercola throughout the year, and we took some of our doctors, and one of which was on a vegan diet and successfully went into ketosis. So, we can think of it about that as it still can be a very plant-based diet. Ketosis can be done many different ways. Let me just hit some of the pitfalls. Many people, we got emails, I can't get into ketosis. Those are typically toxic people. So toxicity plays a major role. I know a lot of people, struggle not just to get in ketosis, but they don't lose weight on a ketosis. Again, very toxic people, that can be the case. Where they get into ketosis, and yet they seem not to be able to lose weight. And again, we always point out restriction is a big part of this. Doing ketosis with intermittent fasting is very, very important, because when people go into ketosis, when you start using fat as energy, you release something called cholecystokinin, which actually diminishes appetite normally. So you end up eating less, not because you're, pushing food away, because you're full. And therefore that ends up in weight loss. And Seyfried and many others pointed out that if you don't get that food restriction, caloric restriction that happens naturally, not because you're trying to eat less, then you don't get the results of the ketones. You also don't lose weight, and tumors don't shrink. So by doing intermittent fasting with it, you automatically, you're eating less by eating less often. You get the restriction with the ketosis, and then that can be a real help for weight loss. Another pitfall is electrolytes. A lot of people, the first month or two, you lose a lot of electrolytes because you're losing glycogen. And the electrolyte depletion, potassium, magnesium, calcium, can cause some muscle loss and even energy loss, not feeling well. So always pay attention to that. So those are some pitfalls about ketosis. But again, watch the shows. There's many.
Mm-hmm. Right. And a lot of key pitfalls. So if don't just give up. If you've been trying the ketogenic diet, think about some of the suggestions and tools that we've just offered and play around with it. And adding in that restriction is such a game changer. So, yeah. All right. So we had number 5, emotional healing, and number 4.
Yep. Oh yeah, number 5. You're
all right. Yep. Oh yeah. I was gonna go back and do a little review before we do the drum roll for number 1, which number 2 leads beautifully into number 1, which I was kind of looking at all of them as well. Just a beautiful part of your multi-therapeutic approach, Dr. Pompa. But okay, so we started the episode with number 5, emotional healing, and the importance of getting our minds right for healing and having that healing miracle mindset, I like to call it. So I think number 5, that's so key, hugely popular topic. Number 4, true cellular detox, of course, what we talk about a lot on this show, and is a key component to getting results, of course, with any program. Number 3, fasting. We have so many different episodes and just tons of research and resources on fasting. So if you want to incorporate fasting into your life, definitely check out all of our resources. Number 2, just talked about the ketogenic diet. So without any further ado, number 1 is diet variation. Woo, woo, woo. Wow, we get a lot of questions on this. It was episode number 157 where we really dug into the concept of it, explaining it, and its implementation. But in case people haven't watched that episode, which definitely I recommend checking out, we take a deep dive into diet variation in that episode. But what is it, and why should we care?
Yeah, it was hard for me not to talk about fasting and ketosis and not talk about diet variation, right? I pulled back because I didn't want to tip my hand. But, it is an ancient healing strategy. And what it is I think when we think about, just eat different foods, that's kind of it, but it's so much deeper than that. It really is AKA feast famine cycles, and utilizing this. So let's talk about ketosis. This is one of the pitfalls is people go low carb or ketosis for a long time. The body eventually goes, okay, if I'm only using fat as an energy source, because remember folks, the cells can use sugar and fat. So ketosis, we're forcing the cells to use fat as its major energy. Well, eventually it goes, okay, I feel like I could potentially be starving. I want to hold on to this fat fuel. So it starts to burn less of it, or it becomes more efficient at utilizing it, right? So now it says, okay, I'm just going to hold on. And it does it by blunting insulin receptors. So you hold on to more fat. It can plug fat cells up with water. It has a lot of clever strategies. So what I noted years ago is that the bodybuilders knew that if you did carb days every once in a while, you kicked in fat burning again. Why? Simple. Reminded the body, You're not starving. You have plenty. Oh, great. We'll start burning fat again. So that's a principle of throwing in, 1 or 2 carb days, or even feast days, even higher calories, even higher protein. Just reminds the body that it's not in a starvation mode, breaks that pattern that it's set up to hold on to its fat, and you start to become a fat burner again. But it goes far beyond that, because we know that people like with hormone conditions, adrenal issues, thyroid conditions, it's said that, oh, they don't do well in ketosis. They can't intermittent fast or fast. Truth is they can, but they have to understand diet variation. So throwing in carb days just does hormonal magic, because we know that elevating glucose in insulin, you need insulin to make certain hormone conversions. You need insulin to actually help estrogen work. Take thyroid hormone from T4 to T3. You need insulin for those. So if you're chronically low carbohydrates, you're chronically low insulin, you can actually affect those hormones. So these days where we throw in the feast, it just works magic with the hormones, hormone optimization. And then we even take it a step further to diet variation monthly, because that's kind of weekly. Monthly is where we realize that, ladies, you're a great example. You can get cravings the week before your period, or maybe the week of your period. So we said, why don't we listen to those cravings? Let's give the body the chocolate that it wants, healthy chocolate.
Yep.
And but let's give it the carbs. That's right. Let's give it the carbs that it's desiring. And lo and behold, we took 1 week before the period or the week of the period and did high carbs. Boom. Magic happened. Now all of a sudden, ketosis, or whatever you're doing the rest of the month, total magic. So, and then we talk about seasonal.
Why do we have those cravings during our cycle or before our cycle?
Yeah, I think because the body's so intelligent that it knows it needs them to make these hormone conversion. It needs to use estrogen more wisely. Guess what? Insulin helps that process of estrogen. So it even, helps the utilization of estrogen. So insulin does that. I think thyroid hormone gets more pressure around that time. And if your thyroid's already struggling, then the low insulin can be a factor, because you need insulin to convert your stored thyroid hormone, T4, to the active T3. So there's a greater need for that hormone during that time. So guess what? The body's intelligent enough to say, please eat some carbs. I need this conversion. So it's following the body's innate intelligence. That's it. And then there's seasonal diet variation, where we talked about fasting once or twice a year, right? Or maybe even monthly for people who have greater challenges. Those are ancient healing strategies. But and then we have times where we move in ketosis. Maybe it's in the heart of winter when people were forced into ketosis. Emulating that's great. And then summer comes, spring comes, we have different foods that are now coming to, right? You have all your greens that's starting to grow. I think our microbiome adjusts to that. And now we start making more enzymes that need the greens outside. So eating the greens and moving out of ketosis, where now we have a focus on even some of the new fruits coming in, which would tend to move people out of ketosis. Oh, and then what happens at the end of summer, we start getting the grains that start coming, right? And again, storing up for winter. We can move out of ketosis again and get ready for winter, where we could move back in. So point is seasonally, it is very important, I believe, to change your diet, not just stay in ketosis or low carb. Stay healthy, but healthy higher carb, healthy higher plant-based, fruit-based diets in the summer, or spring, moving that around. So diet variation weekly, monthly, and seasonally, I believe there's magic to it. And science keeps showing that I believe we're right on this. So there's not one diet. I think that there's room for all of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes such sense from kind of more of a primal perspective as well, why this works so well. So it's not new science. It's understanding it and applying it in a new way, once we've kind of had to untrain ourselves from all of these, cultural beliefs that haven't been serving us for a long time.
Yeah. So, even the debate over, grain and gluten, and, we said it's not just gluten. That's always been, our argument, right? It's, bad digestion, toxins that really are causing the leaky gut, some of the problems with gluten. But when you look at cultures, we have a culture where we're eating grain all year round. that's bad. I mean, that's going to lead to obesity and other things all the time, right? But, you know, if we look at ancient cultures, they ate it when it came, the wheat, etc. When did it get harvested? In the fall. Now we develop wheat where we can harvest it twice a year, but it was just once a year. It was in the fall, heading into winter. Oh, ironically enough, that seasonal change that I talked about, the sun position, changed the microbiome. We start producing an enzyme called amylase in a much greater amount, and it gives us more of an ability to break down these hard proteins that can be hard for people with poor digestion to break down, like gluten. So there's a time even to perhaps eat that. So, I mean, all of those arguments are diet variation.
Yeah. And just the variation principle in general applies to so many things. It's not just food, but we have fasting variation, we have detox variation. It's just kind of being able to apply it in a strategic way where it's most effective is really where kind of the magic starts to happen. So amazing concept.
Yeah. I mean, exercise, I think, is a great point, Meredith, because we know that if you go into the gym and you do the same exercise, every time, the same routine every time, after a while, you see no results. In the beginning, you saw results, but then it's the same thing. You're not getting results. And then the moment you switch something, all of a sudden you get results again. It's because the new stressor, the new exercise forces adaptation. Adaptation makes the body better. Same with diet. The moment you shift your diet again, all of a sudden it goes, hey, I feel better on this diet. Look, it's not the diet. Now you're creating your body to adapt again, and all these amazing hormone changes occur. And, that adaptation process, your microbiome gets stronger and better. There's no doubt humans are meant to shift their diet. The problem today is we don't have to shift our diet. We can stay on the same diet year round, but I believe it's creating health problems. And again, using the strategies of weekly variation, feast famine cycles, and again, some examples there, instead of just a feast day a week, add a couple fast days in a week where you don't eat a day, right? Go 36 hours or maybe 24 hours. Feast famine cycles. Our ancestors were forced to do it once or twice a week. We don't have as much food. Watch what happens with that as well.
Love it. Just mimicking nature. So brilliant. Well, those 5 topics, I'm sure a lot of you are going to be excited to hear about, because we just get so much conversation and dialogue around these. So please share this episode with your friends and family, because these are such key concepts for all of us to understand, to really optimize our cellular health and to live our best lives. So thank you, Dr. Pompa, for helping to bring these topics to the world.
And I want to thank our viewers and our fans and listeners, and because we've been able, grace of God, to impact many, and it's because you all do share the shows and tell your friends about us. So thank you. I know that we have a message that's real, and it's different, and it's part of an answer to no doubt a world that needs this, that has a lot of health problems, and if we're going to change the world, health has got to be a part of it. So thank you all.
Amen. All right, guys. Thanks so much for watching. We will see you next time. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.